we're going to be dependent on God today for this sermon to be successful. And I pray that whatever you hear, whatever you experience today will indeed draw you closer to Jesus Christ and understand the meaning of Christmas. Everybody shout, it's Christmas. It's Christmas. So what's the big deal about Christmas? We talked about that last week just a little bit. We talked about the importance of Christmas, the significance of Christmas, and why Christmas really matters. We said that Christmas matters because Christmas intends to point us to Christ. Say, Christmas points me to Christ. Right? Because if you look at the word, there is no Christmas without Christ. So we said it matters because Christmas intends to point us to Christ. And to the Magi, we looked at them and we saw that to the Magi meant the coming of the prophesied king of the Jews. And to Herod, it meant an end to his reign. And to Bethlehem, it meant that God had not forgotten about them. And Bethlehem has always been an important place to Israel. For Israel, it was a place where Rachel, Jacob's wife and Joseph's mother, died. Bethlehem was literally known as the city of David. It's the place where their most famous king, King David, was born and anointed by Samuel to be king. But now, there's one who has come that is greater than Rachel, that is greater than David. Now, the Messiah, Jesus the Christ, has come. Bethlehem was an important place because of all the things that happened there, but then also all the things that will continue to happen there. Sent by God, the Messiah came. Born of a virgin, Jesus came. Worshipped by magi and hated by evil men, this baby changed the world. Christmas reminds us of that. Christmas reminds us of this holy infant whose family had to relocate, who had to move and seek asylum in a foreign country because somebody wanted him dead. Christmas reminds us of that. Christmas reminds us of a precious boy who taught at the temples. By the age of 12, he was teaching on a level of knowledge that baffled aged scholars. Christmas reminds us of that. It reminds us that there was a man who healed the sick. It reminds us of a man who fed the hungry and consoled the brokenhearted. It reminds us of a man who raised the dead. Christmas reminds us of the truth. The truth that where there is hope, we find it in Jesus. And so there's hope for the hopeless. There's rest for the weary, and there's forgiveness for the sinner, and there's love for the unlovable. Christmas reminds us of that. Let me give you just a few examples as we analyze what Christmas meant to folks. In John chapter 5, verse 1 through 9, John writes, "Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, and paralyzed. One who was there had been invalid for 38 years. Somebody say that's a long time. 38 years he was invalid. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" And that is a peculiar question for me. Do you want to get well? Because anybody in their right mind would rather be well than sick, wouldn't they? I mean, nobody's walking around with a collar on their neck because of a fender bender in hopes to cash in on an insurance claim, are they? They'd rather be well. Nobody is making a bigger deal of their issue because they want attention, are they? Because they'd rather be made well. Nobody is lying about being sick when they're really well, are they? Because we'd rather be well than sick. Hopefully. But Jesus asked the question, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me in the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." The next verse tells us, "Then Jesus said to him, 'Get up, pick up your mat, and what? And then at once, the man was cured. One word from Jesus changed this man's entire life. He says, at once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. The day on which this took place was what? It was a Sabbath, and we talked about the Sabbath before. We talked about how important the Sabbath is to some people where you're not supposed to do any kind of work on the Sabbath. And so this was problematic because this man is doing something that he's not supposed to do on the Sabbath. He is carrying his mat. I told you when I was in Israel, there was an elevator there where it was a Shabbat elevator, where when you got on the elevator, it stopped at every floor because you weren't supposed to push the button because that was considered work. Well, this man is carrying a mat on the Sabbath. I got fussed at for taking a picture on the Sabbath. This man is carrying a mat. So it's problematic what Jesus did at this moment because it's not that Jesus healed the man, but it's what resulted after his healing. And after his healing, the carrying of the mat is a testimony that this man had encountered Jesus. But some people are not interested in your testimony because they're so religious that they want you to follow rules. And so what Jesus shows us is it doesn't matter how long we've been in the situation, 38 years. This man was invalid. It doesn't matter how long you've been in your situation. It doesn't matter what the rules are of the land. It doesn't matter what people think about your situation. And let's just talk about this man's condition for just a moment because some of us have been dealing with something for a very long time. Some of us had dealt with something for a very long time until you encountered God. And perhaps people, while you were going through, they ignored your issue because they got used to your brokenness. They ignored your issue because they got used to your misery. They ignored your issue because they got used to your struggle. Maybe their busyness has caused them to walk right past your problem. But what I like about Jesus is he'll stop for you. No matter what you're going through, he'll stop. No matter what your issue is, he'll stop. No matter how long you've been dealing with it, Jesus will stop for you. And that's what I really love about Jesus. And I'm reminded of another story about two sisters that we'll talk about briefly. And the lesson that we'll learn from these two sisters is that if Jesus is willing to stop for us, then perhaps we should stop for him too. And the story is told in Luke chapter 10, beginning in verse 38. It says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, not Mary, Jesus' mother, another Mary. Right? She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. Next verse says, but Martha was distracted. Pause there for a moment and think about this. Martha was distracted, and some of us are just like Martha. Let's just be honest. Some of us, Jesus is in our house, but we're distracted by other things. Jesus has come to visit, and he wants to talk to you, but you're worried about the Christmas tree. You're worried about the presents under the tree. You're worried about the decorations. You're worried about all that's going on around you, and Jesus is right there. And he wants to spend time with you. He wants to be with you, but you're too busy preparing for entertainment. You're too busy preparing for the company. You're too busy preparing the food. And Jesus is here in your house. You're distracted by what you think is so important. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. Tell somebody, this is Christmas. This is Christmas. And there's so many people who are distracted. People say things like, once this craziness of Christmas is over, then I'll do this. Once we get past the holiday, then we'll do that. I just need a break from Christmas. Right? So Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things. Many things. Christmas is here. Do I have enough money to buy all the gifts that I need to buy? Christmas is here. Do I have enough food for the company that's coming over? Did I get the right gifts for the people? Are they going to appreciate what I get from them? Is the house clean enough? Christmas is here. Is everyone happy? Christmas is here. We make Christmas or the coming of Christ, really, as we talked about last week. Christmas is about the coming of Christ. We make it so stressful because we add so much to it. But Jesus reminds us in verse 42, he says, but few things are needed. He's reminding us here that there is nothing more important than being in his presence. Look, he says, few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and that one thing, that better thing. You got all this stuff going on, but Mary has only chosen to participate in one. And the one she chose is the most important of all of them, and it will not be taken away from her. Mary chose to be at the feet of Jesus. Martha wanted to make sure everything was perfect. Mary wanted to make sure she was with the perfect guest. Martha wanted to make sure that everybody was happy and everybody was good to go and comfortable and at peace. And Mary wanted to make sure that she was with the one who brings about peace. There's nothing more important than our relationship with Jesus Christ, because at his feet, as Martha failed to realize, but Mary knew. See, Mary knew something that Martha didn't. And Mary knew something that all of us should know. And that is, at the feet of Jesus is where you find rest. Amen. Frustrated about the week? At the feet of Jesus, you find rest. Sick of the busyness of the holiday? Don't worry about that. At the feet of Jesus, you'll find rest. Presents aren't wrapped. And we're worried about the presents when we should be worried about the presence. Present is what we've been worried about when we should be worried about the P-R-E-S. Thank you. You with me? Amen. Get the right presents and you get the right peace. And so perhaps that's why Jesus is referred to as the Prince of Peace. In fact, hundreds of years before Jesus Christ was even born, the prophet Isaiah wrote this about him. Here's what he said. He said, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called what? Wonderful Counselor. Come on, say it like you mean it. He'll be called what? Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and what? Prince of Peace. See, Christians, we believe that Jesus is indeed the Prince of Peace. He is the Wonderful Counselor. He is the Mighty God revealed in flesh. He's the Everlasting Father. He's the Prince of Peace. And Jesus was sent by God to live a sinless life for the express purpose of being the perfect sacrifice to die for us, to die for all men. And throughout history, many people have been willing and still are, and still have, and still do gladly die for the express belief that Jesus is who he claimed to be. The one who stands out to me the most is James. James, anybody know who James is? James is the little brother of Jesus. He's the little brother of Jesus. And I'm a little brother, right? I'm a little brother. And as you can see, I'm actually the fourth of 5 children. When I was a kid, I really looked up to my big brother. I mean, I really looked up to him. I wanted to go wherever he went. I wanted to do whatever he did. I wanted his friends to be my friends. I wanted his school to be my school, and his clothes eventually became my clothes. You know, that's the life of a little brother. I wanted my brother to to look up to. I wanted him to protect me and defend me, and and I wanted to be just like him. And as much as my brother was a hero to me, he couldn't pay me enough to worship him. As much as I love my brother, I'm not willing to die over other people's opinion of who he is. Are you getting what I'm saying here? Now, you probably have a brother or a sister or a cousin or a close friend that you highly respect. Most of us have somebody like that in our lives. But let me ask you, what would they have to do to prove to you that they were God in the flesh? What would they have to do? You'd probably expect them to walk on water, right? You probably expect them to feed 5,000 people with 2 fish and 5 loaves. Right? You probably expect them to be able to heal the sick and raise the dead. You probably expect them to do all kinds of great things. You would probably want them to be able to predict how they're going to die and raise again and pull it off. Then maybe I'll believe that you are God. Right? Well, James, the brother of Jesus, believed what his brother said because he did all those things that you would expect someone to be able to do if they claim to be God. And his belief caused him to defend his brother's reputation. And in defense of his brother's reputation, it cost James his very life. But James isn't the only one to die for, and he definitely isn't the last man to die for somebody who pulled something off as big as Jesus did. The fact that he predicted his death, how long he'd stay dead, and how he would rise again. Only God can do that. James isn't the only one who died for it. There's this organization called the Open Door USA. Some of you may have heard of it. They provide support to persecuted believers in over 60 countries. They report on their website that from November 2017 through October 2018, there have been over 245 million Christians living in places where they experience high levels of persecution. They report that over 4,000 Christians have been killed for their faith, and even more since then. 1,847 churches and other Christian buildings have been attacked in 1 year because of their belief and their faith in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And over 3,000 believers have been detained without trial, arrested, sentenced, or imprisoned because of their belief in Jesus Christ, because of their understanding of Christmas. Christmas reminds us that Christ has come. Christmas reminds the people before Christ that he was coming. Christmas reminds the people in the time of Christ that he had arrived. And it reminds us, those of us who have come after his resurrection, that he will return for his church, for his people. So we don't wish happy holidays because we don't want to minimize the significance of Christmas. I know people are debating about that on social media because we want to group it all together, but let me help you understand this, that Christmas is about more than a family dinner at Thanksgiving. Christmas is more than a New Year's party. It's bigger and sweeter than Halloween. It's more intimate than Valentine's Day. So we celebrate Christmas as the most holy of days. So I thank you for joining us today as we celebrate the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I thank you because I know that you could have chosen to be anywhere today. You could have stayed at home and relaxed, sipping hot cocoa and being warm or whatever it is, but you chose to be here in the presence of God's people to worship him because we know that Jesus Christ is the hope of the world. So that's why we say Merry Christmas. And that's why we say God bless you. Because when God blesses you, it's better than anybody else will bless you. Somebody's going to bless you this Christmas. but the gift won't be as great as the gift that Jesus Christ gave to us when he died on the cross. Amen. Amen. So let's pray. Father, we thank you for helping us to understand what this day is really all about. We thank you for helping us to remember that Christmas is about Christ. That you came to save us when we could not save ourselves. So God, we worship you on this most holy, in this most holy moment, recognizing that you came for us. You came for us. Would you just spend some quiet time with God right now in this moment? If you want to participate in communion, please go back and grab the elements and just partake at your pace as we worship God together. Well, let's stand to our feet and just begin to worship God. Somebody tell him he's holy. He's wonderful. Awesome God.